What if the only person who could truly heal you wasn't a doctor or a celebrated therapist, but a clumsy waitress who once spilled juice on your $1,000 shirt? Nathan Cole never believed in coincidence. At 38, he had everything. He ran a luxury real estate empire stretching across the East Coast, appeared on the cover of Fortune, and owned a penthouse overlooking Manhattan Harbor. On the outside, Nathan was the textbook image of success, polished, brilliant, untouchable. But behind the tailored suits was a quiet battle, the emptiness of a soul that had long stopped believing in human connection. No one knew that he'd spent hours in therapy, tried every imported sedative from Europe, only to still feel like he was drifting aimless, disconnected, numb. Then one stifling Tuesday, as New York sank into gray clouds and blaring horns, Nathan turned into an alley he'd never noticed before. At the end of it hung a worn wooden sign swaying gently in the wind, Olive and Ash, café since 1984. He had no idea that just a few steps further, he'd be stepping out of the world he thought was the only one, and into a quiet corner where a single glance and a heartfelt apology would begin to heal wounds no one else had ever touched. The wooden door creaked slightly as Nathan pushed it open. The scent of toasted bread and cinnamon drifted through the soft breath of jazz playing in the background. No one noticed that the man entering was the CEO of a billion-dollar corporation, and that for the first time in a while made him exhale with quiet relief. He chose the most hidden seat in a dim corner near a bookshelf where the light fell gently overhead. He just needed to sit and not be seen. Then she appeared, not someone the press would chase after. Her apron was wrinkled hair tied up messily, sneakers worn thin. But when she looked up, her eyes, they didn't scan him like a customer. They looked through him as if she was listening to something he hadn't yet spoken. "Good afternoon," she said softly, holding a small order pad. "Would you like a menu? Or maybe a cool glass of juice to ease the heat?" Nathan nodded only to avoid speaking. He wasn't thirsty, but he didn't have the energy to refuse. Minutes later, she returned, and in the moment of shifting the tray, her hand trembled, maybe from fatigue, or maybe the glass was simply too slippery. The red juice toppled, cascading across Nathan's white dress shirt like a misplaced brushstroke on a flawless canvas. The entire cafe fell silent. Everyone braced for an outburst, but Nathan simply looked up, into her eyes. No anger, no blame, just something ancient, long buried, quietly awakened inside him. "It's okay," he said gently, and in that moment, everything began to shift. "I'm really sorry." Her voice stumbled, fragile as if about to break. "I didn't mean to. I'll pay for the shirt. Or grab a towel." Or Nathan didn't respond right away. He didn't look at the stain, he looked at her, at the anxious posture of someone who didn't expect to be forgiven, yet still tried to hold on to a final thread of dignity. He spoke steady as if he were making $1 million decision. "It's just juice." "It's all right." She blinked, surprised, gave a small nod and turned away quickly, leaving behind a strange silence on the table. But Nathan, a man who typically loathed such pauses, didn't find it uncomfortable. He watched her steps back to the counter, how she lowered her head to apologize to another coworker, how she gently rotated her wrist, likely sore after a long shift. Every small movement spoke of something long gone from his world: authenticity. A few minutes later, she returned and placed a fresh glass in front of him, her smile sheepish. "This one's spill-proof. Guaranteed." Nathan chuckled. A real laugh, not scheduled, not social. "The first in a long time." "That's already better than most contracts I've signed," he replied. She tilted her head slightly, eyes flickering with dry humor. One of those workaholic types, huh? No one had ever spoken to him like that, especially not without knowing who he was. She sat down, didn't ask, didn't wait for permission, and he didn't object. Because something in her eyes told him this wasn't just a conversation, it was a return. She introduced herself with a voice soft as wind. "I'm Eliza. Eliza Monroe." Nathan nodded. Her name echoed gently in his mind, like the lingering note of a distant piano. Eliza didn't ask who he was, didn't need a business card. And for reasons he couldn't explain, that made Nathan breathe easier. She tilted her head, studying his face, not with judgment or pity, just presence. "You know," Eliza said, still looking through the fogged glass, "sometimes people aren't broken. They're just tired of pretending they're not." The sentence fell like a pebble into deep, cold water, small, but it stirred something beneath Nathan's surface. He couldn't respond. He didn't know how. She stood after a few minutes of silence, offered a soft smile, and returned to the barista counter. He didn't leave, didn't need a reason to stay. He just wasn't ready to return to a penthouse full of nothing. Nathan sat another 45 minutes, no phone checks, no contract reminders. He simply watched Eliza, how she tucked her hair behind her ear, when flustered, how she leaned in when customers whispered like every word mattered. For the first time in years, no one around him was rushing. And in that slowness, Nathan no longer felt alone. That evening, Nathan returned to his 41st floor apartment, a place where everything was perfect. Automatic curtains, sensor lighting, a glass wine cabinet, and panoramic views of the Hudson shimmering in the dark. He took off the stained dress shirt, looked at the dried red streak across the fabric, then tossed it into the trash. Not out of anger, but because for the first time that shirt had made him feel truly alive. He didn't turn on the TV, didn't open his usual financial reports. Instead, he sank into the long sofa and opened the Notes app on his phone, as if even he was surprised by what he was doing. Then Nathan typed a single thought. Why did her apology feel more healing than all the therapy I've had? He stared at the words for a long time. Didn't edit. Didn't send. Eventually, he deleted them. But he couldn't delete the feeling still lingering in his chest like a soft, persistent echo. The next morning, with no appointment scheduled, Nathan left the office earlier than usual. He turned down the same alley once more, entered Olive and Ash, sat at the same booth. Eliza saw him. She smiled, not surprised, not asking why he'd returned. Just one quiet line. "You came back." Nathan nodded, exhaling. "I didn't mean to." "But I did." She didn't laugh, just nodded like greeting an old friend. Sometimes that's enough. In the days that followed, Olive and Ash became the only destination not listed on Nathan Cole's packed schedule, and yet the one he never missed. 4:30 p.m., every day. No reservations. No calls ahead. He sat in the same booth quietly like it was a ritual. And Eliza. She never made a fuss. She simply brought him a hot cup of tea he never asked for, but she remembered he didn't drink coffee. No grandeur, no warmth for show, just the small things, a warm drink, an unhurried gaze, and silence that didn't feel threatening. They didn't talk philosophy, didn't dive into soul-bearing conversations. Some days he spoke a sentence. Some days he said nothing. So did she. And yet, minute by minute, Nathan felt something inside him shifting gently, deeply, like golden late-day light sliding through a cafe window. Eliza never labeled him depressed, anxious, or withdrawn. She didn't try to fix him. She just listened, and in her quiet, non-judgmental presence, the silent parts of him began to speak again. One rainy afternoon, the cafe's power flickered, then went out. Eliza lit a cedar-scented candle and placed it between them. In the warm glow, Nathan noticed a faint scar running along her left wrist. Before he could stop himself, he asked, "What happened there?" Eliza paused, her gaze caught between memory and the present. Then slowly she said, "I tried to save my dad's camera when our house caught fire. But in the end, the only thing I saved was myself." Her words fell light but deep, and in that moment Nathan felt an ache that wasn't entirely his own begin to drift away. 2 days later, while Eliza was wiping down the bar, Nathan hesitated before saying, "There's a fundraiser gala this Saturday. Governor's hosting. The board expects me to be there. I was supposed to go alone, but..." He paused, then asked softly, "Would you come with me?" Eliza laughed, looking up from a stack of receipts. "I don't own anything remotely gala-worthy. My wardrobe's all cafe uniforms." Nathan smiled. Not his investor smile, but something real. "Then let the richest guy in the room worry about that." That Saturday night, Eliza stepped out of a rideshare wearing a borrowed midnight blue vintage dress, simple but enough to hush a ballroom for a few seconds. Not because she sparkled, but because she didn't try to be anyone else. The gala was at Grand Fairmont. Crystal glasses. CEOs orbiting each other like planets spinning around power. Manufactured smiles. Calculated handshakes. Then Daniel Grant arrived, CFO of Cole Enterprises, a man whose smile never touched his eyes. He sauntered over, champagne in hand. Glancing at Eliza's new PR strategy, he smirked. Nathan gripped his glass. "Meet Eliza Monroe." Daniel nodded curtly, assessing her like a financial variable. Then he pulled Nathan aside to a shadowed hallway, voice lowered but sharp as a blade. "The board's not happy with your disappearances. Rumor has it Mercier Group wants controlling stake. If you don't stay visible, they'll make a move." Nathan's reply was cold. "We have a poison pill clause." Daniel shrugged. "Clauses. Don't stop whispers. And keep the waitress charming but low profile. Investors like their narratives tidy." When Nathan returned, Eliza stood near the string quartet, hands folded, visibly uneasy. He realized he had dragged her into a world built to crush people like her. They left before dessert. In the cab scented faintly of pine, Eliza rested her head against the window, city lights brushing her face like watercolor strokes. "They look at you like an equation," she said without turning. "All variables. No margin for being human." Nathan said nothing. But in that moment, he knew his luxury apartment had never felt colder. Monday exploded like a quiet bomb. 9:02 a.m. Nathan received a text emergency board meeting. Noon. When he walked into the conference room, Daniel Grant was already presenting a full merger proposal flashing across the screen. Words like cost optimization, shareholder growth, and leadership refresh filled the slides, but to Nathan it was nothing more than a hostile takeover dressed in corporate language. When his turn came, Nathan simply said, "We'll reconvene after I've reviewed every word." His eyes locked with Daniel's. Not a warning, a declaration. Immediately after the meeting, Nathan called Eliza. No answer. He called again. Still nothing. A cold thought crept into his mind. She found a better opportunity and walked away. Same old story. People always leave. People always choose safety. Not him. Panic surged. Without thinking, he left the office, drove straight to Olive and Ash. The bell over the door rang. But the cafe was empty. Chairs flipped upside down. Kitchen dark. Silence thick as fog. Across the street, a sleek black sedan crawled past. In the back seat, Daniel. Passenger seat, Eliza. Nathan froze. Daniel caught his eye, smirked, said something to her. The car accelerated. In a heartbeat, Nathan's world cracked along an old fault line, trust or self-protection. He didn't run, didn't yell. He just stood there in the cold afternoon rain, letting it soak his collar as if testing whether he still felt anything at all. That night. The luxury apartment echoed with wind. Nathan sat motionless, a glass of untouched wine in hand. He was just rising when a knock, soft, hesitant. He opened the door. Eliza stood there, drenched, eyes red, a sealed envelope in hand. "I can explain. But you need to read this first." Before he could speak, heavy footsteps approached. Daniel Grant appeared, no longer hiding his malice. His eyes gleamed with smug control. "Didn't expect me tonight, did you? You always thought you were the smartest guy in the room, but you never saw what was right in front of you." Eliza stood between them, not cowering, not defending. Her hand trembled. The envelope slipped, hit the hardwood soaked in rain. Silence. Thick. Cuttable. Nathan bent down, picked it up. And inside was the truth. Nathan stood in the doorway, the rain-soaked envelope clenched in his hand. Daniel's smirk was surgical. "Go on, open it. You'll see." Nathan tore it open. Inside, 1. A printed email chain, internal exchanges between Daniel and several board members outlining plans to remove Nathan by manipulating mental health narratives, painting him as unstable, unfit. 2. A handwritten letter, soft strokes, careful, honest. From Eliza. "Nathan, I never wanted you to find out this way. I once worked under Daniel almost a year ago. When I realized who he really was, I walked, cut ties, disappeared. But he found me, promised money, revenge, power. I refused, thought I could stay far away. Then I met you. You weren't part of anyone's plan. You were something I hadn't felt in years, real, kind, and just as broken as me. I tried to keep my distance, but you kept coming back. And the only thing I wanted was to stay. I haven't worked for him, not since the day I spilled that juice on your shirt." Nathan looked up. Eliza stood there, not pleading, not performing, just waiting. Daniel broke the silence with mockery. "Sweet, but love letters won't save your CEO seat. The board's already voted. You're out." Nathan's voice was calm, steady. "You might want to check your inbox." Daniel blinked. Nathan stepped forward. "I knew you were playing this game. And I didn't sit still. Poison pill's been activated. Your shares are diluted. Every backstabbing vote void." He pointed toward the door. "And under company bylaws, you're trespassing. Leave. Or I'll call security." Daniel opened his mouth, then froze. The arrogance in his eyes shattered like ice under weight. Wordless, he turned, walked down the hall. Gone. The apartment fell into deep stillness. Eliza looked at Nathan, voice trembling. "I'll understand if you never want to see me again. But every word I wrote was true, even if it's too late." Nathan didn't speak at first. Then he exhaled a breath so deep it felt like he was tearing down a wall from inside. "I built walls to protect myself, but it turns out I was starving behind them." Eliza didn't step closer. just waited. No demands. No assumptions. Nathan asked, voice low. "Then why did you come back tonight?" she whispered. "Because I didn't want to be the kind of person who leaves when things get hard. I've been her before. I hated her. I didn't want you to see me that way. There was no dramatic hug, no cinematic kiss, just a silence full of forgiveness." Then Nathan said quietly, "Then let's see if I still remember how to trust someone." The months that followed were not a fairy tale. Nathan still had nights where he woke up breathless, days when he barely spoke. But now, he wasn't alone. Eliza didn't try to fix him. She didn't ask, "Are you okay?" She just poured tea, wiped the counter, and sat beside him, a presence with no expectations. And Nathan, a man who'd planned every step of his life, began for the first time to live without a map. There were no diamond rings, no black and white wedding photos, just the small things. He told her about his quiet father, something he'd never spoken of. He pulled out the one childhood photo he still kept hidden in a drawer. And one evening, walking along the Hudson Promenade when her hand brushed his, he was the one who reached for hers. One night after closing the café, Eliza took a marker and wrote on the brick wall behind their usual table. Just 4 words. "You chose to stay." Nathan stared at it for a long time, then picked up the marker, and beneath it he wrote, "And so did I." Because in the end, what healed Nathan wasn't elite therapy or imported medication or the promises of the powerful. It was presence. It was being seen without judgment. It was love, not as a solution, but as a choice made again and again, even on the hard days. And for Nathan Cole, the man who once had everything except peace, that was finally enough. Now it's your turn. Do you believe that love, even when late, even when imperfect, can still heal wounds science can't explain? Comment 100 if this story touched you. Tell us what country you're watching from, and share this video with someone who needs to know that sometimes a broken heart only needs another heart brave enough to stay.